Title: The Village That Lived Off the Map. Part 1. The Road to the Mountains That Didn't Exist. That morning, the road to the mountains was quiet in a way that felt almost unnatural, with no cell signals, no signboards, no shops, just a thin, dusty path stretching between empty lands and silent hills. I wasn't supposed to take that route, but curiosity has a strange way of pulling you toward places logic tells you to ignore. As I walked further toward my village, I noticed something unusual. Scattered huts across vast empty land, not one or two, but dozens, maybe more, built from mud, cloth, and rusted tin. There were no electricity poles, no water lines, no internet towers, nothing that modern life depends on, and yet people were living there. Children ran barefoot on rocky ground, women carried water from somewhere far away, and old men sat outside huts, staring at the hills as if they had been waiting for something for years. I slowed down because something felt different. How could a whole community exist here without facilities, hospitals, proper food supply, or even clean water access? More importantly, why had no one ever talked about them? A little boy stopped and looked directly at me, his eyes calm, not surprised and not scared, as if strangers entering their forgotten world was something he had seen before. He asked quietly if I was from the city, and when I nodded, he simply replied that I would not stay long and walked away, leaving a strange heaviness in the silence of the hills. Part 2. A Life Without Systems. The closer I moved into the settlement, the clearer their reality became. My phone showed no service. There was no clinic, no school building, no shops, and no vehicles, yet life continued in its rawest form. A woman was cooking dry bread over wood fire. Children were sharing one metal bowl of lentils, and an elderly man was fixing a broken shoe using a bent piece of wire as a needle. I greeted them politely, and most responded with a simple nod, not curious, not questioning, just accepting my presence, as if being unseen by the world had become their normal state. I asked one man how they managed food and water, and he pointed toward the mountains and said they walked. When I asked how far, he calmly replied, 3 hours for water, and sometimes 4 when the spring dried. There was no complaint in his voice, only facts, plain and heavy. What shocked me most was their calmness. No anger, no loud frustration, just quiet survival. Then I noticed something unusual near the far edge of the huts, one structure different from all the others. It was not a hut, but an old stone building that looked abandoned, yet every villager avoided walking near it. Part 3. The Unspoken Boundary. I instinctively walked toward the stone building, and for the first time the villagers reacted. A woman suddenly called out and told me not to go there, her voice filled not with anger, but fear. I stopped and asked why, but silence followed. An old man slowly stood up and approached me with rough hands and a deeply lined face shaped by years of struggle. He said that place was older than their huts, and when I asked who built it, he looked toward the mountains instead of answering and said no one knows, though his tone suggested otherwise. Another villager whispered that people who ask too many questions do not stay long, repeating the same sentence I had heard earlier. The building had no doors, only a dark entrance, and although its walls were cracked, they were stronger than the fragile huts, as if it was built to last, to survive, to watch. I realized something chilling. No children played near it, no animals grazed around it, and not even birds rested on its roof, as if nature itself avoided the place. Part 4. The Story They Never Tell. As the sun began to fall behind the mountains, I sat beside the old man who had spoken to me earlier, and after a long silence, he finally said that I probably thought they were poor because they had no facilities, but that was not the real reason they lived there. When I softly asked why they stayed, he looked directly into my eyes for the first time and said they could not leave.
The wind grew colder as he explained that years ago, many families had tried to move to cities. Some left, some never returned, and some came back changed. When I asked what he meant by changed, he did not answer immediately, and instead pointed toward the stone building again. He revealed that long ago, outsiders, including researchers, engineers, and officials, used that building for something related to the land and the sound of the mountains. My mind froze at the mention of sound because this place had no records, no maps, and no signals. Then he whispered something that sent a chill down my spine, saying that the mountains here listen. Part 5. The Night of Realization. Suspense ending. Night fell quickly in the mountains, and there were no electric lights, only small fires glowing outside the huts, while the sky remained unusually clear and filled with stars rarely seen in modern cities. I was preparing to leave when a low vibration began, not loud, not mechanical, but faint and present, like a distant hum echoing through the land. The villagers did not panic or react at all, as if this was normal. I slowly turned my eyes toward the stone building, and for a brief moment I saw a faint light flicker inside it, which made no sense because there was no electricity, no wires, or generators anywhere in the area. The hum grew slightly stronger, and suddenly the little boy from the morning appeared beside me again, looked at the building, and quietly asked if I could hear it now. My throat grew dry as I asked what it was, but instead of answering, he asked something that completely froze me, whether I had told anyone that I was coming there today. Before I could respond, the humming stopped, and the silence became heavier than before. And then, from inside the stone building, something moved. Part 6. The Movement Inside. I stood frozen, staring at the dark entrance of the stone building as the silence pressed against my ears harder than the earlier hum. The air suddenly felt heavier, as if the entire valley was holding its breath. The little boy did not run, did not panic. He simply kept watching the building with an expression that was far too calm for someone his age. A faint scraping sound came from inside, slow and uneven, like something shifting across a rough surface. I asked the little boy in a whisper if anyone lived there, and he shook his head slightly and said that no one lives there, but it is never empty. His words did not sound like imagination, they sounded like something learned over time. I took one cautious step forward, and immediately I noticed something strange. The closer I moved, the colder the air became, even though the fires behind me were still burning. It was not normal night cold, it was a deep, unnatural chill that seemed to come from the ground itself. Part 7. The Sound the Mountains Remember. The old man's earlier words echoed in my mind about the mountains listening, and as I stood there, I began to notice faint echoes that did not match any visible movement, almost like distant whispers carried by the wind, but repeating in patterns. I pulled out my phone instinctively to record the sound, but the screen flickered and then froze, showing static instead of the camera view. There was still no signal, yet the battery started draining unusually fast. Behind me, the villagers had quietly gathered at a distance, none of them crossing an invisible boundary near the stone structure. One of the women softly said that the sound comes some nights and disappears before sunrise, and when I asked how long this had been happening, she replied that it had been happening as long as her grandmother remembered. That means decades, possibly longer. The idea that an entire community had lived with this unexplained phenomenon without outside help or investigation made my chest feel tight with disbelief. Part 8. The Truth About the Outsiders. I turned back toward the old man and demanded to know what the researchers had actually done there years ago. He hesitated, then slowly revealed that a team had once come claiming they were studying unusual acoustic vibrations in the mountains, saying the land produced natural low-frequency signals that could not be detected in normal cities. They built the stone structure as a testing station, installed equipment, and stayed for months. At first, nothing unusual happened, but later they began hearing sounds at night that their instruments could not properly record. According to the villagers, the researchers became obsessed with the phenomenon and started conducting experiments at night instead of during the day. Then, one day, without any warning, the entire team left. No farewell, no explanation. They simply abandoned the building and never returned. The villagers said that after the outsiders left, the humming began appearing more frequently, as if something had been disturbed and never settled back. Part 9. The Light That Should Not Exist. I gathered the courage to move a few steps closer to the entrance, despite the fear building inside me, and the faint light I had seen earlier appeared again, dim and pulsing, like a weak heartbeat inside the darkness. It was not steady like an electric bulb, and not flickering like fire.